Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and we do watercolor projects every single week. We break it down step by step, so if you're new or coming back to this or just wanted to try it, you can follow along. We are doing this today, our truck floral. Floral truck.
Oh, that's florals of truck.
Florals, the florals in the truck is what we're painting today, thank you. Super fun project. I know it seems kind of intimidating, but the nice thing about like structured things is like they're structured, right?
That's what makes things easier.
You know what? I've heard that somewhere. Structure helps. I don't know. So we are using two paintbrushes today. We are using a round 6 and a round 2. Our go-to brushes. These are our hard-working little men. I named them men names, but you can. Maybe you just want to leave them as paintbrushes, and that's okay.
Interesting. What if they were named, have more feminine names?
I've seen some people name their paintbrushes. One of them named their round 10 Big Bertha or something.
I'm like a horrible person.
Why?
Because I never thought of that. Like, nope, they're guy names.
Male privilege right there.
That's what it is.
Okay, so we are using 5 different colors today for this project. So our very first color is dandelion yellow. Our second color is rose red. Our third color is deep blue. Our fourth color is violet.
Ooh, that's pretty.
Isn't that a good color? And very last, we're doing black. If you do not have these exact colors, that is okay. You can use whatever colors you have, or if you just have a yellow, red, blue, purple, black, that would be great. Again, you can totally customize this project. So even if you don't have a black or well, you might need black for the wheels, but you know, you can make it however you want. Maybe your wheels has red wheels, I don't know.
Maybe they're rusty.
Maybe.
The tires fell off.
Maybe there aren't wheels at all, and
Exactly.
you just leave that part blank.
Low rider.
Okay, so we have our outline here, and if you need an outline, you can get it just off our website. Just find the Floral Truck Kit page and click on the box that says outline, and you can print it. Or if you want the kit that comes with the paint and reference and step-by-step, it's on our website, letsmakeart.com. Just a kit for 15 bucks. It's not too bad.
If you don't have a printer.
If you don't have a printer, you can just hold your paper up to the screen of your computer and trace from there. It's happened before. I've done it for sure.
That's so great.
Okay, so there are 5 steps to this project. So our very first step is we're going to put in this like turquoisey bluish color on our truck. The second step, we are going to do the lights, the wheels, and the bumper. Our third step, the florals in the truck. Our fourth step, we're going to do our little license plate and the shadows that's underneath the truck. And then we're going to take a moment, like we always do. The very last step is
Details.
Details. Okay, so I'm grabbing a little bit of blue. I'm putting it in my center of my tray. Now, these trays, if you get them from us, they're supposed to be convex. Is that when they stick out?
It is, yeah.
I'm so proud of myself.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Convex because, and then the edges are flat on the table, so I put my paint in the edges where they're flat, and then I bring colors to the center and mix in the middle. That's just how I like to do it. If you try and put a puddle of paint in the middle, it's just going to bleed off the sides. So I grabbed a little bit of yellow to give it this really pretty turquoisey color, and then I'm adding water to make it really, really light. So you want to make sure this is a light value. And then I'm just going to start filling it in. Now, I'm not going to take my paintbrush and just like go across the entire thing, because with this truck and with cars, you'll see that there are different like levels, and we want to be able to define those, and that's how we give it dimension. If I were to just take this color and just go it all the way across and it's totally even, it would look totally flat, and we wouldn't have these little pieces that look like something is sticking out and something is pushing back. So I'm going to start just kind of on the outside here. So we're filling in. I'm just starting with the outside of the truck, this like outside rectangle that doesn't have a bottom.
We don't know what it's called.
A tabletop. That's what it looks like.
Tabletop.
A table.
It does look like.
A table from the side.
We also do woodworking for trucks.
Okay, now we're gonna do this part. They're over the wheels. Wheel
Wheel
wells.
Yes.
Okay, that's the correct name.
I'm pretty sure.
So, and there's kind of like a hard line right here. So it's rounded at the top, which is why it's curved. And then we're gonna put the color right at this line that's on our outline. So this is where it's gonna be stronger in color. And then we're gonna rinse our brush a little bit and spread it out. And we're gonna leave these tail lights alone. So if you put color and you see that it's spreading and it's still wet, you can actually push the color where you want it to go. So if you want that color to dry near the top so it's darker up there, just push it up there. A little trick for you.
That's kind of cool.
I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And you can see if you keep pushing it, that color is gonna move down. Just use your brush to push it back up. Like so. Okay, now we're gonna move on to another part of the truck. So what might be helpful, because there's actually a lot of lines going on here, and like trying to keep track of what is light and what is dark and all those things, I'm gonna number them. You don't have to number yours, but just so I can refer to different sections. So this inner rectangle right here is section 1, and then this right around it is 2, and then that next section is 3, so that's gonna cover here and here. This is 4, and this is 5. Okay?
Cool.
So when I do 1, I'm gonna start with 1, and I'm just gonna leave those numbers on there. You're gonna see them through the watercolor on mine, but if you don't want it to see through on yours, then you can erase them as you go. Before you paint, you can't erase them after. So whenever you're painting anything that has form or shape and you wanna communicate that it's going in, you're gonna want it to be a darker value. So when you're doing the inside part of this, you can see that it's darker, and then that communicates to our viewer that it's going in, and then this outer rim, which would be layer 2, is lighter, which shows that it's pushing up. So when you put a dark value, it's gonna push it down. When you put a light value, it's gonna push it up.
That's pretty cool.
Kanan's face was like, it was like a light bulb or something. He was like, what?
Literally just blew my mind.
So to make something a darker value, you're just gonna use a little bit more color. So right along the edge here, I'm gonna use a darker, like blue color, and I'm just doing it on the inside. And then I'm just gonna use water to spread it out. Like that. Now, I'm gonna skip layer 2. I don't wanna do that layer yet, and I'm gonna move on to layer 3. The reason why I wanna skip layer 2 is if I try and wet this area with the light value and it touches this, they're gonna bleed into each other, and those lines just won't stay as defined. So you're just gonna wait for it to dry before you move on, before you try and paint it. So what I like to do is I like to just move on to a different area in the meantime, and that way I'm not just sitting here. So it's the same thing with layer 3. So if this is my layer 3 right here, this rectangle, I'm gonna work around the second one. Also, I would like to say that near this top, try and keep the layers pretty light and don't go too dark, because we're gonna put flowers on top of it.
I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. I tried to keep it quiet. I apologize.
You did a pretty good job.
Thank you.
So you just start with the color. Now when you get to this outer tabletop that we already painted, there's also going to be like a little shadow between 3 and that area. So you're just going to put that in with the darker value. Blend out a little bit. So the darker something is, the clearer it is how deep it goes. Does that make sense? So usually, you know, like truck beds, how that like thing pulls out. So the space between like the sides of the truck and where it folds out, it goes all the way through. It's a hard line because it's got to open up. So that's why it's darker right here than compared to this, where this doesn't open up. It goes in, it goes farther away, but it doesn't go far, it doesn't go super deep far away. So then that means it doesn't have as dark of a value. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna softly.
If I knew more about trucks or vehicles in general, I might be able to elaborate and help you.
Now this area up here, what I just kind of like, layer 2 and layer 3 kind of bleed together a little bit in this outline. So the biggest thing that you want to keep in mind is right between like this tabletop and layer 3 is it's shadowed. That's the biggest thing. Also, we're gonna have like flowers and people aren't gonna see that very well. So don't stress about it too much. I got to do the same thing on this side. Put a little bit darker value. And then I like to blend out. So I put that darker value in, but now I have a hard line. So I'll just take a damp brush and soften that line up so it's a smoother transition. Like so. Okay, I'm going to skip layer 4. Which is this one, and I'm going to go to layer 5. Same thing, it's going away from us, so it's going to be darker. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. And of course, you can mix layers along the way. And I know that like if you're looking at this layer probably is reading a little bit more blue than the other layers, right? I mean, that's what I'm seeing. First of all, don't let tiny things like that trip you up or make you feel frustrated. Or another thing that you can do is you can always just layer on top of a color. Watercolor is transparent, so you can layer on top of it and see both colors. So if I wanted to do a more green layer on top, the blue layer is still going to show up underneath, which is going to make it that more turquoisey color that we want and match all the colors that we have going on. So don't let things like that stop you. Okay, now we're going to move to our other areas that we couldn't do yet because it was still wet. So one of them is we're going to do the top part of our wheel well, and this is going to be a super light value, like so. So it's just really light wash right on the top. If you got to do another layer underneath here to make it more apparent about this shadow on this side, you can. I felt like I needed to, so I did it. But you might not. Maybe yours is already as dark as you want it to be. Okay, now we're going to move to layer 3, and I'm really just going to use some of the color that I've already painted with to do this layer. So it's going to be a super light value. That's the biggest thing, is we just want it to be lighter than what's around it. However, we don't want it to be so light that it's standing out and it feels disjointed. And I know that that might sound weird, but there's a scale of values, right? And so if I went at this, if this is like, let me paint this out for you. So we have like this value, this, that. And it just gets lighter, right? Can they see this?
Yes, they can.
Okay. So if you're trying to show just a slight shift in value just to get different things across, then like you're gonna wanna stay next to each other. Does that make sense? So if this is our lighter value here, then like our layer 3 or our layer 1 is gonna be about here. If we're trying to show how deep something goes, like on the sides of these of where the door opens, that's where we're gonna want to go to a darker layer. If we're working with 1 and 2, we don't wanna be like here and here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Those are too far away from each other on the value scale that it would almost feel disjointed. So value is relative to what's next to it. So if you painted yours super, super dark, that's okay. Don't let that stress you out. Just adjust your painting that you're probably going to be painting more in here as your light values as opposed to here.
Perfect.
Okay. So, and then same thing with 4, just a really soft light wash across that right there. And now just by playing with those different values, all of a sudden our truck has dimension. And you're just like, oh dang, that's the back of an old cool vintage truck. Like, so that's why I really stress values and variation, because that's how you get form. And you can even do it more. Like you can define some of these lines. We can go in and define them a little bit more. I'm gonna do that kind of up here in this corner. And you can turn your, so I'm just kind of going in and defining some of these edges a little bit more. You don't want it to get too outliney or blocky, but it's okay if you just give a little bit of detail line to hint at it. And the nice thing is if you put one of these in and you're like, oh, that's too dark. Well, guess what, my friend? Just take some water, blend it out. Okay, that's looking pretty good.
That was a nice table you've painted.
Okay, that is step 1. Oh, no, it's not. Because we forgot to do this part. However, I want this part to be as light blue or this light turquoisey color or whatever color you're using, as light as possible, as I put down a really dark color. That's okay, I can lighten it up. Because we're gonna put flowers over top of this area, we don't wanna leave it white because trying to like paint those areas back in after we put flowers in would be a mess. But if we leave it too dark, then if we paint flowers on top, we won't be able to see them because watercolor is transparent. They'll get like muddied with the blue a little bit. So try and do like the lightest color you can for this top of the truck. Okay, there, now we're done with step 1. Now we're gonna move on to step 2. We're gonna do the lights and the wheels and the bumper. So let's start with our lights. Now I'm using this rose red color for our red. And because these lights are reflective, there's going to be parts where they look really dark and parts where they look really white. That's how we communicate reflection, is like the intensity of the value change within it. So I'm going to first start off just painting this red. I'm avoiding the outline parts that we have on our outline. And if you like miss these or you're just kind of eyeballing it, that's okay. There's really no rhyme or reason, except we need to have all 3. We need to have our total red. We need to have a little bit of black in there to mix that in there to have strong shadowed areas. And I just kind of put those in the center. And then you need to have like a white, just straight white bright highlight. Okay, and do the same thing on the other side. We're going to start off just using this red. You're going to leave some white spaces. We're going to go in with our little bit of black mixed in with our red to get, oh, that's too black. Actually, no, I think that'll work. I think there's too many highlights. I'm going to cover some of these highlights up.
Maybe it's a broken light.
There we go. So because we have that strong highlight and because we have those strong shadows also, it has that kind of, you know, you've seen taillights where they're kind of like reflective and have different facets.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now we are going to move on to our wheels and Fender. I'm just going to take black for the wheels. So there's a few different black areas. So right underneath the truck, right here, and then as it goes down to the license plate. And by the way, I've only been using a round 6 this entire time. I have not switched to my round 2. I need to be better about telling what brushes I'm using. So I'm just sticking with it. So there's a black part, then there's like this black ridgy part here. Now I'm only going to do the top half. The second half I'm going to do in a lighter color. And now I'm going to do the wheels. So I'm going to do the outline. And you can just fill them in totally. Or what I like to do to give it like a little bit of dimension is I try to imagine where those wheels turn. So here is clearly the back of the wheel and then it goes under. And then now we're only seeing the inside of the wheel on this side. So we can like adjust the value to make that clear, right?
That's cool. So
we wouldn't leave that white. However, we can just put like gray in there or something. Just something, just a little bit of differentiation. And if they bleed together, it's not the biggest deal. I mean, you'll see in my example that it's kind of muddy, but just like a hint where there's two sides to those. And then I'm going to take that same black, finish this up. It's like a gray because I mixed water with it. Like so. And then our bumper has like a bumper goes like out and then back in a little bit. And we want to communicate that part that goes back in.
That curve.
That curve, that soft little curve. So you just make the bottom part where it curves out a really, really light gray. So if I'm just following this line and curve. Now I'm leaving a really thin white line between my tires and this fender because if they touch, it will bleed. If you don't like thin white lines, then just wait for your tires to dry before you do this part. And all of a sudden, just by putting that shadow in on that bottom of the fender, it gave it dimension, right? This, we can now tell it's sticking out and then it's going back in, just from that little value change. Okay.
I would drive this truck right now.
Me too. Me too. And if you really want, you can do like rust spots on it. So to make the rust, you're going to take a little bit of red. You're going to take a little bit of yellow. That's going to make orange. You're going to mix that with black. And there's like that brown rusty color. And I'm just going to do like really soft hints of it. Like just, I don't want to go too crazy because I don't want it to take over my painting and be distracting. But it's like a fun little detail that you can put. And rust, it's like it shows up in weird spaces and makes weird shapes. So you can really make it however you want. Totally up to you.
That's cool.
All right. Now we are going to move on to step 3, which is the florals. So fun and bright Okay, so I just kind of started on one side and worked my way across. Now there's two things I just want to, well, I guess it's just one thing that I want to point out to you, which is if we want to communicate that there's space and that there's not flowers only on the edge of the bed, but they actually go in to the bed. Does that make sense? And we're seeing the top of them.
Yeah.
It's similar to how we painted our flower field. So similar to how we did our spring rabbit, if you did that project, where things that are closest to us, which is right here at the edge, are going to be defined and large. As they move back into space, they're going to get smaller and they're not going to be as contrasty. The value is going to kind of even out. So you'll see at right here at the top of my bed, I have like the flower shapes, and then when you get in the back, they just kind of get messy little blobs that are lighter in color. And then,
Sarah,
yeah.
stand by.
So let's put our flowers in. This is where you can switch to your round 2. So I'm going to mix a little bit of my violet with a little bit of my rose red to get this like so gorgeous pink purpley color. And then I'm going to start off by just kind of on this right side. I'm just going to make like little curves, almost like I'm making like grapes or I'm trying to think, lavender or just like bushy flowers. There's so many different kinds of flowers. So I'm doing these like roundish shapes using this dark value. And then some can kind of go over too, right? Like they're falling down and off. And then I rinse my brush, and using a lighter value, because it's just water on here now with a little bit of paint, I'm going to push some of this color around. Now remember to leave a little bit of white spaces in between. We want to give our flower some breathing room. And you can decide like which colors go where and how many you want to do. All of that stuff, totally up to you. Like that. So it's like a little bushy flower. And if you want like little stems poking out with like exact flowers on them, you can do that too. That. And then I'm going to use more of I'm going to use that violet with a little bit of deep blue and mix that together to get more of a blue purple. And I'm going to do little lavender pieces kind of sticking out over here.
Those are cool ones.
Yeah, aren't they fun? Okay, for the green, you're going to mix your yellow and your blue together to get this green. And then you're going to do little stems. Now remember, when you're doing thin lines, vertical hold, you don't want too much water on your brush, because even if you're lightly pressuring, all that water is going to drop down on the paper. So it's just like vertical hold, thin point, like that. And then and this is so whimsy, like I'm putting a little stem, like it's kind of coming off here with little leaves. So play with that, play with those little whimsy parts, have little things kind of floating out. Then we're going to do some like daffodils, kind of. So this is the difficult thing, and I think where people get hung up, is when we think of the shape of a flower, we are so determined to make sure we make those shapes when we're painting. However, when you have things that are tightly packed together and far away from you and in groupings, it's actually really hard to see those defined shapes, because they like get mashed together and line up and things, you know what I mean? So don't get too hung up if you're like, but that blob doesn't look like a daffodil. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So like, I'm going to do little daffodils here, and how I'm saying they're daffodils is they're yellow. That's how I decided that they're daffodils.
That's what I was going to say. It may not be a daffodil.
Yeah, it could be tulips. It could be, I mean, it could be anything. but like you can do little flower shapes. Drop in hints of like orange in there for variation. And then just kind of blend them out, let them kind of get messy. You don't want to blend too much across because then things will get muddy, but you can soften the color that you laid down. Now, I'm going to use some more of this red. And I'm going to do kind of like roses now. So, right in the middle, with roses, all you have to think about is like they're tiny things that are super concentrated and then get bigger as they bloom out. So your lines in the very center of your rose are going to be super tiny and like overlapping a lot. So it's like here. And then as you're making your way around, your lines get thicker and longer. So just do a couple of those kinds of things, these kinds of like circulating curved lines that overlap. And then as you get farther away, you're just seeing like the tops of flowers. So I usually like to make my shapes with color and then just use water, blend them out a little bit and around, like so.
That's the centerpiece.
What
Looks great.
Okay, and then just keep moving around and you are gonna have your own flowers that you're gonna wanna put in. Maybe you're making this for your mom who loves a certain kind of flower, all that stuff. You get to decide what's on here. I'm gonna put some greenery in. And of course, you can do the same thing with greens. Like you can have some like grass things that are like sticking up. Just make sure that you're making them as you move back, they're just getting lighter. Put some leaves in. And then I kind of did some like, trying to think, they're kind of like hollyhocks almost, where they're on that big long stem and the flowers are like on, have you seen hollyhocks?
I don't think I've seen a
Oh,
hollyhock.
Keenan, they're so beautiful. So I'm going to just be doing some like floral roundish shapes in a line that gets smaller as they go up. And then, are you looking at them now?
I Googled them.
And then they have a stem, so I'm going to put the green stem and just kind of go in between the flowers.
Yeah, that's what I saw on Google.
Yeah.
Oh.
My mom actually has these in her yard, and they are beautiful.
That's pretty.
They come in all these different colors. They're so gorgeous. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is the colors that you're actually using, right? Like as I'm getting over to this side, I'm going to want to introduce some purple and some yellows in again. If we keep pink on this side and we only have like pink and red over here and it's purple and yellow over here, that might be distracting to our eye. So just kind of keep an eye on the different.
Keep an eye on.
I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna do more lavender, but I'm gonna make it super tiny, so it's because it's super far away. So it's like these little things sticking up.
The smaller the voice, the more detail you can get out of your brush.
And then we'll do some more flowers. You can switch up the colors. Kind of more of these rose shape. But you can even do swirls, you guys. This is where I don't want you to get tripped up. You can just take your paintbrush and do a little swirl. And it's going to communicate that same thing. Just remember to mess it up after you paint it. I painted it. blend, but leave white spaces. So pick up that paintbrush. So you're kind of just like dabbing a little bit.
That's a dance move.
I was about to do it. And then I was like, no, Sarah, no.
Don't do it.
Don't
Refrain.
do it. You're a 30-year-old woman. And then I'll introduce some yellow over here. Now again, we're just getting to like the things that you're seeing just like the tops of kind of. So you don't have to get crazy detailed. You're basically just introducing a new color. And then I want to get some of these maybe more like lilacs or something. And then put some green in there too. So you can have like long leaves, you can have little leaves coming off. Like so. And then if we want to like make it seem even more overflowing, I did some really smaller flowers kind of at the top. They kind of reminded me of like, I guess they could be hollyhocks too, or like sweet peas, where it's just like, here's just a really soft color, really light, of just these random flowers that are kind of like poking through. But I want to make them really light. If I made these really dark, then they'll jump to the front. So they're just really light hints.
What if someone put vines on their truck?
That would be so cool.
Ugh.
I can't wait to see actually what people come up with for this one, because it's so fun, it's so bright, and it's just so easy to customize it to whatever you want. And don't be afraid to cross this barrier, right? This is the edge of our truck, and if it was covered in crazy flowers, then things would be overflowing and kind of falling out of it and passing that barrier line. So don't stick so straight, like don't keep it so rigid, because if it's too clean and things aren't breaking that barrier or that line, then it won't have that feeling of something overflowing.
I just thought of another idea.
Yeah.
A flat tire.
What
it would
about
look
it?
really cool if one of the tires was flat.
Sorry, I can't. Like I had another idea. I'm like, what is this idea?
That's a great idea.
Is it a new app? What are you doing? All you said, flat tire. I'm like, okay, are we painting one? Are we?
Because it's a truck.
Keenan, that was good. All right. So we did our flowers. You can really go crazy on this. You can have your flowers going all outside of your truck. You can have them long. You can do whatever you want. It is your painting. It's your thing. Really play with it, have fun with it, and make it your own. And I just really felt like I needed one more little leaf coming out here. Okay. Now we are going to move on to our license plate and our shadows. So you'll notice on our license plate, I wrote I Heart Mom.
Classic prison tattoo.
Classic. You can do whatever one you like. I'm going to stick to my round 2. If you want to draw it first before you write it, you should do that. Or you can leave it blank. I'm just going to go for it because that's how I am. But I'm just going to be like, we can get some red.
I like the colors of your water.
Oh, they're good, aren't they?
I noticed they're the same exact color.
I always do 2 cups because I'm like, one will be my clean water and one will be my rinsing cup. And I never stick to it. I rinse in both. Okay, Mom.
M-O-M.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And some people are better at lettering than I am, but I'm not going to let that stop me from doing this really fun part of this project. So I'm just going to go for it. Oh yeah. And then license plates always have those little like whatever down at the bottom. I added that to make it feel a little bit more legit, like it's an actual license plate, but you don't have to do that. Okay, now for our shadows for our tires for underneath the truck, so we ground it. I'm gonna just take water and my round 6, just using the black from the wheels. Just gonna spread it. Or if you wanna pick up some black, if it's not spreading very well, you can totally pick up some black. So it's gonna go underneath the car. And this is where it kind of gets tricky because we have a shadowed area on our bumper. So you just need to make sure one is darker than the other. It doesn't really matter which one. If you want to make your bumper shadow more dark, you can, or you can make your under the car shadow more dark. You just want to be able to define those two areas so they don't like blend into each other. And then another thing about shadows is they go all the way around. So don't just don't line up your tire and only do shadows from there. You're gonna it's gonna keep on going around it, like so. If we try to make our shadow stop right at the bottom of our tires, then we wouldn't be communicating that it's on a continuous ground. Makes sense?
Yes.
So we wanna make sure that people know that's no, this is a ground that keeps on going, which is why we go underneath the car, because the car itself is casting a shadow. And the very last step is just looking at your painting and seeing if there's anything else that you can adjust or do to improve it. So you'll notice here at the top of my truck, you can still see the blue, which is why we put that in. Can you imagine going around and trying to put blue all around the flowers? It would be a nightmare. But one thing I am going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of black ridge to that window that would be in the back of the truck. So it's in the outline if you have the outline, and I can still see some of its marks. So just where it's peeking through the flowers, I'm going to add that little touch of window. And then you're okay, where else? Where else? I think maybe right underneath here, I can do a little bit job adding this shadow. So I'm just gonna do another layer. And then blend that out so it doesn't feel like such a hard line. And also I feel like my number 4 layer is maybe just a slightly too light in value, that it's sticking out a little bit. So I'm just gonna softly go over that one more time. And maybe I'll do some more flowers. I think that's it. Now, if you want, sometimes when you're blending out the tires, we stole the color from the tires to make the shadows. When you do that, it kind of softens your tires a little bit. So if you want, if it's dry, you can go back in and redefine those if you lost too much.
Go back in and air them up.
Yep. Put some air back in those tires. Now, again, we've talked about different values. So if you're thinking of your truck and the shadows on your truck, the darkest part of the shadow is going to be right by the wheels. That's going to be the darkest part because that's where it's making contact with the ground. So, and then everywhere else around it is going to be lighter because the shadow fades as it goes. So really ground those tires, make sure that's kind of where it's the most dark. And you don't even have to go crazy with this shadow. Really just a light hint, just a light gray will do fine. And that's it. I'm I'm
so
done.
cool.
It looks great. If you painted this, share it with us. You can tag us on Instagram. Let's Make Art is a hashtag you can use so we can see each other's paintings. Or if you want to tag us in it, Let's Go Make Art. We have a Facebook where you can tag us in your work that you do on Facebook. And we also have a wonderful Facebook community that is meant for just sharing your work. And that way you can see what other people are doing. And it's not a competition. This is not a space where you post it to compare, and you don't go there to look to see if you're better than people or worse than people. You go there so you can see how people are approaching the same exact painting you are, and maybe you can learn something from it. You learn the most in art by looking through other people's eyes and seeing how they do things. That's how you learn. So if you're interested in that really encouraging space, it's Let's Make Art Watercolor. You can go there and share your work and see how other people are painting the same project as you. It's a lot of fun, and I think that's all I gotta say.
That's it.
Bye, you guys.